Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Johnson edition. We turned out a poem 537, Me Prove It Now, Whoever Doubt. Now, many have seen this as another master poem. You'll recall from earlier conversations that Emily has this person in mind who occasionally she declares as master, or that to which she gives high regard. Is this another one of those poems? I'm going to leave it to you to decide. But it is clear, I say clear, at least one reading of this poem seems to suggest that standing behind this poem is Shakespeare's play Hamlet, and more particularly the key character of Ophelia, sweet nymph as he calls her earlier in the play, and of course Ophelia will commit suicide by drowning mermaid-like within that play. We've given full lectures of that at LearnStrong.net. Speaking of LearnStrong.net, it's our assumption you've been following our stuff there. The playlist for us is Chats with Emily. Hopefully you worked through our set of introductory comments as well as the preceding 536 poems. We just finished with 536, The Heart Asks Pleasure. Now, if you have been doing that study with us, you'll be able to place this poem within the context of a number of prior poems where Emily is often trying to prove some sense of worth or value. Now, the irony, of course, today is that she's considered one of the greatest poets who ever lived. But during her lifetime, Emily was definitely not understood or recognized as that person. There is, of course, the possibility of romantic type of affection that's here as well. And we will very quickly come back to poem 520 in our study. Let's enjoy the poem. Me prove it now. Whoever doubt, me stop to prove it now. Make haste, the scruple, death be scant for opportunity. The river reaches to my feet, as yet my heart be dry. O lover, life could not convince, might death enable thee. The river reaches to my breast, still my hands above proclaim with their remaining might. Dost recognize the love? The river reaches to my mouth. Remember when the sea swept by my searching eyes, the last themselves were quick with thee. Now, there is no clear understanding of who the thee of this poem is. Like, who is she talking about as she is speaking about a river that is rising, ultimately drowning her? Is that the way we will read this poem? And to what degree is she trying to say, I've got to prove something to you in my final moments? Again, we have no idea who she's trying to prove this to. But she'll say it with the word now twice. So you're going to circle that word, I'm sure, 2 times in the first 2 lines. The immediacy of this poem, in other words. There is something direct and immediate about whoever it is she's talking to. She's saying something of profound importance, as she will say, me prove it now. Whoever doubt, me stop to prove it. So notice, instead of the I, it's me here. Yes? And I'm going to prove to you my, what? Fidelity? My, dare we call it, love? That is to say, my worthiness. And she says, I'm going to prove it to you now. And then make haste. In other words, we don't have much for time. And then the scruple, exclamation point. Did you see it? Exclamation point. Notice the poem ends with an exclamation point, giving a suggestion that there's almost like a sense of like hyper energy here as well. In other words, I'm really going to show this to you. I'm going to prove this to you. Right? And then she'll say it. Death be scant for opportunity. I've got to, she says, think about what death might be like as a form of proof. And then at the conclusion of the second stanza, she'll come back to this word, death. Then all of a sudden, we're with Ophelia and the river. Now, in some ways, this will take us back to our reading of poem 520. You'll remember this. I started early, took my dog, and visited the sea. The mermaids in the basement came out to look at me, and frigates in the upper room extended hempen hands, presuming me to be a mouse aground upon the stands. But no man moved me till the tide went past my simple shoe, and past my apron, and my belt, and past my bodice too. In this poem, it'll be the breast, right? And made as he would eat me up, as holy as a dew, upon a dandelion sleeve. And then I started too, and he followed close behind. I felt his silver heel upon my ankle, and my shoes would overflow with pearl, until we met the solid town. No one he seemed to know, and bowing with a mighty look at me, the sea withdrew. Now, we're going to play a similar game here. Only now we're not with a sea, we're with a river. And notice what she says. The river reaches to my feet. Now notice, we'll go from feet to breast to mouth. Is she entering the river? Is she entering the water? And every step, the water comes higher. And is this a form or a way of proving this notion of her love? The river reaches to my feet, as yet my heart be dry. Now, obviously, guys, we can read this poem symbolically and not literally. Her dry heart might suggest the lack of reciprocal love, right? Oh, and then she'll say it. Lover. Notice we'll go from lover to love. Life could not convince. Might death enable thee? Whoa, what an interesting suggestion. In other words, if I can't convince you in my life that we are lovers or that I care for you, then I will convince you in my death. Wow. Again, who is she speaking to? We just don't know. Then the river reaches to my breast. Now the river is coming up. Now, this use of the word still, guys, I think there will be two references for us for the poetry of T.S. Eliot. I have said a number of times already in our study together that I'm convinced that one of the greatest poets of the 20th century was borrowing heavily at times, I believe, from Emily's work. His use of the word still, you'll remember what he says in East Coker, we must be, what does he say, still and still moving into another intensity? By the way, that poem will end with the idea and the reference of water as well. The idea that still can be both about duration, I'm still in this room, but it also can be about fixation. I am still, as in not moving. Notice she repeats it. Still, dash, my hands above proclaim with their remaining might. Dost recognize the love, question mark. Right? In other words, do you get it? And then we're back to the river. The river reaches to my mouth. So notice, the water is coming up. Then the use of the word remember, which obviously we've seen Emily play this game. When the sea, notice, we've gone from a river to a sea. Of course, we'll say it. All rivers lead to the sea, yes? So, sea swept by my searching eyes. And again, we're back to poem 520 here. Dash, the last, maybe the key word of the poem, dash, themselves were quick with thee. Now, a number of scholars have pointed out that the dictionary that Emily lived with, and she read voraciously, would say that the word quick has a number of meanings. Fast, darting, energetic, but an arcane word, use of the word quick is also pregnant. Which is why, again, we can find ourselves back to Hamlet and Ophelia. You will recall, of course, in our study, Hamlet says to his girl Ophelia, get thee to a nunnery, go, right? Why would he do that? Is it possible that Ophelia is carrying Hamlet's child and he knows it and she knows it? Possible. We've said in our full lectures at learnstrong.net, this is one interpretation of the treatment of Hamlet towards Ophelia. But then notice the dash, and then with thee, capitalize thee, and an exclamation point. Now, I can't help but read this and think of T.S. Eliot's love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. You'll remember at the end of that poem, till human voices wake us and we drown, he comments on the mermaids that are played there. When we get to poem 729, we're going to come back to this poem. Alter, when the hills do. Falter, when the sun question if his glory be the perfect one. Surfeit, when the daffodil doth of the dew, even as herself, sir, I will of you. And then when we get to poem 861, we'll play a similar game as well of this tension between Emily and some potential lover. Split the lark and you'll find the music, bulb after bulb in silver rolled, scantily dealt to the summer morning, saved for your ear when lutes be old. Loose the flood, you shall find it patent. Gush after gush reserved for you. Scarlet experiment, septic Thomas. Now do you doubt that your bird was true. When we hit both of these poems, we'll come back to this poem. Okay, let's talk at 2A really quickly. What is the message of a poem like this? I think our argument is that it's hard for true love to go unrecognized, unappreciated in some way. At 2B, well, obviously the questionable questions is, who is the thee that she's referencing in this poem? At 3A, we mentioned the work of Eliot, especially Prufrock. I would recommend to go back and look at the Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net, as we have of all of the lines of 4 quartets, and just study the way in which a poem like this works. Even now that I'm thinking of it, think about Wasteland and what that Phoenician sailor teaches us from the depths of what? The ocean. Finally, in 3B, when was a time to own a poem like this for yourself? What was a time when you felt your love was not appreciated or reciprocated, and you felt somehow obligated to try and prove it? And how would you do something like that? I hope Emily's challenging you. Thank you.